Hey guys, welcome again to Cover, where we bring literature and discussion together online. My name is Sam.
My name is Vanessa.
My name is Brian.
And we are your literary today. We're going to be talking about The Graduate. We not only read the book, we watched the film. Brian on the end didn't get a chance to read the book, but he's very familiar with the film, so he's going to be chiming in. I will say right off the bat that there are spoilers, so if you have not read the book or seen the film, you can still watch it, but just know we're going to be talking about every single portion of this book. That includes the ending, the middle, and the beginning. We can't stress that enough. If you still want to watch, by all means, go ahead, and hopefully you might be interested in this afterward. So, we have Brian on because he chose this. This was his pick. So, kind of tell us what inspired you to pick this.
I chose it just because I thought it was an easy read. I had never read the book. I'd watched the movie a countless amount of times. It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
I think it was really well made. So I just wanted to choose something that would be a good read for someone that's not really into very heavy books, and also just to kind of get a perspective of which one was better. What was there anything missing from the film that was critical in the book, things like that. So that's what led me to choose.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is a classic book. Just for your information, the film won an Oscar, right?
I believe so. I
Yeah.
mean,
No, yeah, that's what I.
the
You
cinema-
heard it here. They won an Oscar. It's fact.
We're telling you. Yeah, Vanessa, tell us what you thought about the book. Like because you read the book first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, Brian, but I don't want to say I hated it.
That's a
Didn't
strong
hate
word.
it. I
That's a
don't
strong
hate
word.
books. I don't. I
Yeah.
love books.
Yeah.
hated it.
But I have never found a character to be less, what is the word? Relatable. Not relatable. I just don't feel bad for the guy. I
hear
really
you.
don't like the guy.
I hear you. I was trying really hard to relate to him. I know that you
Yes.
brought up that word. The way that it was relatable was that there's a certain expectation in society, and the main character, Ben, he has that pressure immediately, right off the bat. He has all these adults, or these people who are older than him, rather, because he is an adult, kind of trying to steer him in a direction
I was
that he doesn't
treating him
want
like
to
a
go
doll.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he just got out of college, he graduated, and they're already asking him what he wants to do next, and he doesn't know.
Well, and all they talk about are the accomplishments he's made and what he can do next to be more impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's so dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the thing that made me connect with the film when I first watched it was the fact that obviously, yeah, it's hard to feel sorry for that guy because he's a rich guy.
He has everything.
Yeah, his
Everything.
family's well off. They're wealthy. They sent him to a good school. He got a good education. He didn't really have to worry about life itself. He was able to focus on all that good
Sure.
stuff. And he comes out of it. But then you see what he's lacking. He's lacking because everything has been laid out so well for him.
Yeah.
That at this point in his life, it's like I think he's questioning the fact is this what I want or is this what I've been told that I need to want?
Right.
And then with that, it's just like that sense of being lost. And I think that everybody can relate to that, whether it may have been like in your late teens or early 20s when you finish college. I mean, I watched it when I was in my late teens, and I think that's when I was really looking for a direction, and I think that's why I connected so much with him.
It
But I can
resonated.
definitely see why you weren't able to relate to it, and I think also because of how heavily it's written for pretty much for boys or men. It's not really written for women.
I would also have to say that so the book and the movie, they're almost scene for scene,
Yeah.
word for word the same.
Very
but,
parallel.
But the thoughts behind his words are very outlined in the book, and you just get from the beginning that he's an ass. Sorry.
Yeah. It's all good. So
You get this feeling that like he's at this party, right? And in the movie, he's trying to be nice to people, but he just wants some alone time.
Right.
Okay? He's trying to be nice, but he just wants some alone time.
Yeah.
In the book, he's overtly rude.
Yeah.
He's overtly
He's
mean
trying
to these
to-
people who
yeah.
are trying to be nice to him.
yeah.
And then you get this, oh my gosh, the scene with his dad's making an announcement by the pool, and they're all around the
scuba
pool.
gear.
Yeah, the scuba gear that he got for his 21st birthday, and like drum roll please, and how much like that's where I feel like I really got a sense of why he's dissatisfied.
Right. There's this predictability as Brian mentioned, and quite luckily the book and the film are very, very parallel, very linear, and I think that to break that monotony, to break that consistency, that's where Mrs. Robinson comes in. She's there to just kind of wreck his world, and
He wants it.
He does.
He wants his world to be wrecked.
It's the first thing that he's encountered, whether it's through the book, and it's very obvious through the movie as well. It's the first thing that he's really been passionate about, and that he made a choice for himself, even if it may have been something that we may not have done. But
Well, and something that you miss out, and I think it's good that they left it out of the movie, but there is a whole time period between when Mrs. Robinson
Yep.
first tries to seduce him,
Yeah.
and he turns her down, and it's kind of open-ended, on Mrs.
Right.
Robinson's part, and Ben calls Mrs. Robinson to start their affair. There is this whole time period in the book that is not in the movie that's very lightly touched on, but
Yeah.
basically he decides to go on this road trip by himself.
random. Firefighting.
Yes, he wants to be with he says with real people. Because he feels like the world he's in is so fake. So
Yeah.
he goes off on this adventure.
He was homeless.
Yes, he was homeless.
He met what he said were whores, basically.
Yes, he has a couple of experiences with some whores.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He sees the world, and it actually lasts all of 3 weeks. But he sees the world, and he comes back, and that's kind
Yep.
of what leads him to call Mrs. Robinson
Yeah.
and say, "Let's see what happens."
Yeah,
No.
and the actress for the film was actually quite beautiful, and
Yeah.
I didn't expect the
Fried chicken
nudity. I'm gonna be
nuggets.
honest. I didn't know that that time period. To be honest, I'm very naive on that time frame. I didn't know they really used nudity in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, they actually didn't. That's the interesting part, is that movie was very controversial for its time.
Yeah.
Because of the nudity, because of the theme of it. I mean, you're talking about an older woman seducing a younger man, which at that time, I mean, if you flip the script and you're like older man seducing a young woman, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you flip the script and
Super
now, like,
taboo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's weird. It's
now
like
there's a term for it now.
Yeah,
Yes.
Cougars.
Yeah, cougars.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And,
Or
and
Mrs.
the other thing that I
Robinson.
love about it that stood out to me, especially for that time, is the cinematography of the film.
Sure.
It's the shots are just beautiful, and they're very unique,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just something that wasn't really being utilized, or it was something completely new for cinematography, which was amazing, and I really appreciated that, as considering that I really appreciate well-made movies.
Right.
And to add to that, the way they used the nudity was very powerful.
Yeah.
Because Mrs. Robinson has done this very shocking thing. She stripped off all of her clothes and basically trapped Ben in this room. And they don't just show her full frontal nudity. They show her from the neck up, and you can see Ben's face, his reaction
Yeah.
to her, and he's horrified,
Yeah.
he's flabbergasted.
He's trying to
and-
look her in the face.
Yes, but he can't. And there are these short shots
Yeah.
of her boobs.
Yeah.
Just boob.
Well,
And then
Boom.
like the navel area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you figure
Yeah.
if you put yourself in Ben's situation and you're trying to be, courteous, you're a man. You're gonna probably take a little
A peek.
Yes.
Yeah.
but not to the where you're.
And
gonna
that's
be
what those were.
staring.
They were
Yeah,
like
exactly.
little peaks, like these horrifying peaks
like,
almost.
moments of intrigue.
It was almost like in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like it almost used the
Like a quick
cheap,
flash.
like the cheap stunts of a horror movie, like flash, nipple, flash,
Yeah.
nipple.
So we know that the relationship lasted, all of a sequence, right,
Yeah.
over several months. But I think that the story changes again with the introduction of Elaine. You know what I mean? He made the promise to Mrs. Robinson that he wouldn't ask her out, and he kept that promise, but he was still having to do it, being pressured. He was succumbing to that pressure again. So he had finally explored himself. He went on that trip. He met up with Mrs. Robinson, but now he's following the instruction of his parents, and he ends up in this other scenario, right?
Well, and I it's crazy because he ends up stuck in this situation where he
Right.
has to go on a date with Elaine.
Yep.
But what's interesting is Elaine almost makes him realize that this new world that he's been exploring with Mrs. Robinson is a sham too.
Yeah.
It's a cheap cover for real life. It's a fling that he doesn't want his life to be defined by. He
Right.
doesn't like it. He doesn't like that they don't talk to each other. He doesn't like that it's a relationship where they use fake names and check into a cheap hotel,
Right. Very
have
artificial.
sex, and don't talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that it was interesting to bring in Elaine. That was that was another, like, what would you call it? It was just something spontaneous that I didn't expect. Something I've never really read before or even seen in a movie.
But what I hate about it, I'm sorry, and it's because Ben basically barely meets Elaine.
Uh-huh.
He's incredibly rude to her, and then when she shuns him,
Yeah.
he fixates on her
Right.
obsessively, and
Yeah.
suddenly she's the only good thing in his life. He wants to marry her.
It's the same in the book too. He's
Yes,
very obsessed.
Exactly. He's obsessed. He's so fixated. And in the book, it's creepy. In the movie, it's creepy. It's this girl he barely knows, and he's obsessed with her because he's obsessed. I think he's obsessed with wanting to obtain goodness in his life.
Yeah.
And he feels like before Mrs. Robinson, his life was empty.
Sure.
After Mrs. Robinson, it was dirty.
Yeah.
And he thinks that maybe Elaine, because she's good and untainted,
Yeah.
I guess, that she can bring joy.
She wasn't so
and
innocent
happiness to
herself.
life.
She wasn't so innocent herself because she accepted his marriage proposal when she had already accepted it from the guy that took her to the zoo.
Well, and she, in the book, she actually kind of alludes to the fact that this isn't like the first time
That she, or even the second time.
that someone's
Or
proposed
even
to her.
third
That she
time.
had been entertaining several marriage proposals and was kind of just stringing them along.
Mm-hmm.
But Ben
Ben.
had shown basically the most obsessive attention, and
Yeah.
that was the attention she wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I could see that.
Yes.
What I think along the lines that you're talking about, I think that Elaine was kind of more of like a rebound at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was something that was available. He
Yeah.
seemed to hit it off. He wasn't expecting to,
Yes.
and then he kind of just went with it.
Well-
Which it kind of leads into like kind of like the ending of it.
Yeah.
Where
It was very abrupt.
I mean, I know in the movie and the film, I think it's definitely one of my favorite endings because he goes and grabs her from the church and they run away together and
Yeah.
they
It's
get in this-
absurd. The story, it's like absurdity on top of absurdity on top of absurdity until you get to this crazy absurd ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, with the ending, they get into the bus full of nuns. They're sitting in the back, and then there's that shot of them, and you can see Ben, Dustin Hoffman's face, and there's almost like this feeling like what now? Like, what do I do now? Like, what's
Yes.
next? Like, this isn't.
They're-
Maybe he
they're-
realized that this wasn't going to fulfill him the way he thought it was going to.
Well, and what's interesting about that is so the book and the movie very strongly parallel each other, almost line for line
Right.
at certain points.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting was, and I thought the last words that Ben and Elaine say to each other were very powerful, and I thought it was interesting. I was waiting for them to say it in the movie, and they don't. Basically, they've done all of that. They're sitting on the bus, and you kind of get this sense that like he's been running in front of her. He's basically been dragging her behind him until they get onto the bus, and they sit down, and she turns to him and she says, "Benjamin," with a question mark at the end, and he says, "What?" Period. And I thought that was so powerful because it's like he didn't even remember she was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this was a journey for him.
He's constantly in the moment, and just to kind of like bring it all around, it was a good story. I like the way that it was written. I think that it was really relevant, especially and really controversial, as you said, for the time. The film did a really good job of depicting the characters. The casting was great. Dustin
Yes.
Hoffman, one of his earliest roles, did very well.
Mr. Feeney.
Mr. Feeney,
Yeah.
the actor rather who played Mr. Feeney, played his father.
Yes.
That was quite noticeable, and it was a nice little surprise. But the actress who played Mrs. Robinson actually was a nice surprise. It was really
Yes.
delightful. She was beautiful. I was convinced of her prowess, you know,
Yes.
her methods. But I think what was lacking for me was the sense that that something was changing or that was going on. I didn't necessarily understand what I was supposed to get out of the story, and maybe that's the point. Maybe I miss it altogether, and essentially that life doesn't always have an ending, or maybe that it is going to keep going.
Well,
or-
and I think the point too is that people don't always learn from their mistakes. Like he never has this moment of realization that everything's
Consequences.
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And consequences.
So
That's
maybe-
what
maybe
makes
that's what the
what's so
ending is.
dissatisfying.
Maybe that's to me that's maybe why the ending is that moment of reflect. He finally has that moment where he reflects on everything he's done, and then
Well,
now
and you-
he's come to that realization.
You get that in the movie because you interpret that in the movie, but in the book, it's like a sentence didn't end.
Yeah.
Oh,
That what is like
What?
is like he never realizes there's a problem.
Yeah.
awesome.
Right on. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we are cover to cover. I hope you liked our review. We want to know your thoughts, so please leave comments, leave suggestions. We want you to participate. If you've read the book or seen the film or both, you know, kind of tell us if you can agree with any one of us. We had kind of like the spectrum of opinions this time around. I want to thank Brian for being on with us. We're going to have him on a lot more in the future and hopefully expand our literary group.